If I ever write a memoir, it'll be called How to Fix Everything Except Your Marriage. There I was, Tuesday night at 11:30, flat on my back under the kitchen sink with a wrench in one hand and a flashlight between my teeth, trying to stop our ancient pipes from turning our basement into an indoor swimming pool. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spend my days as a structural planner, making sure buildings don't fall down, but I can't keep my own house from literally falling apart. My name is Adrian Falk, and at 42, I've learned that life has a twisted sense of humor. I design the guts of office towers and shopping centers, calculating load-bearing walls and stress points, but somehow missed all the warning signs that my marriage was about to collapse under its own weight. Adrian, are you still under there? Janelle's voice drifted down from upstairs, followed by the click of her heels on our hardwood floors. Even at midnight, she was wearing heels. When did she start doing that? Yeah, just finishing up, I called back, tightening the last connection. Should hold for another few years. Unlike our marriage, I thought, but didn't say. I crawled out from under the sink, wiping grease off my hands with an old towel. The kitchen was dark, except for the light spilling down from our bedroom upstairs. Janelle had been getting home later and later from her job at Premier Events, the trendy event planning company downtown. Networking, she called it, building client relationships. Tonight she'd walked in at 11, claiming she'd been at some charity gala planning session. I climbed the stairs, my work boots heavy on each step. Our house felt different lately, bigger somehow, like there was more space between us even when we were in the same room. Our daughter Emma was away at college, and the silence she'd left behind seemed to amplify every unspoken tension. Janelle was in our bathroom, removing makeup with expensive cream that cost more than my monthly coffee budget. At 39, she was still beautiful, auburn hair that caught light like copper wire, green eyes that used to look at me like I hung the moon. Now those same eyes barely met mine in the mirror. How was the gala thing? I asked, sitting on the edge of our bed to unlace my boots. Fine, exhausting. Mrs. Henderson wants ice sculptures shaped like swans for her daughter's wedding, in July. Do you know how much it costs to keep swan-shaped ice from melting in 90-degree heat? She was talking, but something felt rehearsed about it, like she'd practiced this conversation on the drive home. That's when I saw it. On my nightstand, next to my reading glasses and the paperback thriller I'd been working through, sat a man's watch. Not just any watch. A Rolex Submariner, the kind that costs more than most people's cars. Heavy, expensive, definitely not mine. Hey, Janelle, I said, picking up the watch. The metal was still warm. What's this? She glanced over, and for just a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Panic, maybe, or guilt. But it was gone so fast I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Oh, that... She turned back to the mirror, suddenly very focused on removing her mascara. My coworker Martin dropped it at the office today. I told him I'd return it tomorrow. Martin? The name was familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. Martin Kessler, my supervisor. You met him at the Christmas party, remember? Tall guy, dark hair, talks too much about his golf game. I remembered. Smooth, expensive suit, firm handshake, the kind of guy who called everyone buddy, and somehow made it sound condescending. He'd spent most of that party telling anyone who'd listen about his vacation home in the Hamptons. Sure, I said, setting the watch back down, because nothing screams lost and found like a $5,000 Rolex next to my mouthguard. Janelle's laugh sounded forced. It's not that expensive. Honey, I price out materials for a living. I know expensive when I see it. I studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror. How exactly does someone just drop a watch like this? I don't know, Adrian. Maybe it fell off when he was reaching for files or something. Does it matter? It was the way she said it, sharp, defensive, that made something cold settle in my stomach. In 15 years of marriage, Janelle had never been defensive about work stuff. Stressed, sure. Overwhelmed, absolutely. But defensive? That was new. No, I guess it doesn't matter, I said, but I was lying. I went through my usual bedtime routine, brushing teeth, setting my alarm, plugging in my phone, but my mind kept circling back to that watch. The weight of it, the warmth of the metal, the way Janelle's whole body had tensed when I'd picked it up. As I lay in bed listening to Janelle's breathing settle into sleep, I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time she'd touched me. Really touched me, not just the perfunctory kiss goodbye or the brief hand on my shoulder when she needed to get past me in the kitchen. When had we stopped being married and started being roommates? The watch sat on my nightstand like an accusation, its face catching stray light from the street lamp outside. I told myself I was being paranoid, told myself that structural engineers think too much about stress points and load failures, And sometimes the analytical mind creates problems where none exist, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something in my carefully constructed life was about to give way. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. The watch was gone from my nightstand. When I came downstairs, Janelle was already dressed for work in a navy blue dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled in loose waves that looked professionally done. "Morning," she said without looking up from her phone. "Coffee's fresh." "Thanks." I poured myself a mug and leaned against the counter, studying her. "You look nice. New dress?" "This old thing? I've had it forever." She grabbed her purse and keys. "I'm running late. That charity gala planning session ran longer than expected last night, so I have to catch up on other projects today." "Right. The gala." I sipped my coffee. "What charity was it again?" For just a moment, she froze. "What?" "The charity. For the gala you were planning last night." "Oh, the Children's Hospital Foundation. Big event in June." She kissed my cheek quickly. "Gotta run. Love you." And then she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of perfume I didn't recognize. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the familiar sounds of our neighborhood waking up. Dogs barking, garage doors opening, the distant hum of traffic on Route 128. Everything looked normal. Everything felt wrong. At work, I tried to focus on the plans spread across my drafting table. We were reviewing the structural specs for a new office complex in Cambridge, and normally I'd lose myself in the clean logic of load calculations and steel beam specifications. But today, my mind kept wandering. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," said Dave Martinez, my cubicle neighbor and the closest thing I had to a best friend at Northeastern Structural Planning. Dave was 55, divorced twice, and had the cynical wisdom that comes from watching too many marriages implode. "Just tired," I said, but Dave wasn't buying it. "Tired is when you need more coffee. You look like you're trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing." He leaned back in his chair. "What's going on?" I almost told him about the watch. Almost. But something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe denial, maybe just the hope that I was wrong about everything. "Nothing," I said. "Just work stuff." Dave shrugged and went back to his computer, but I caught him glancing at me a few more times throughout the morning. During my lunch break, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up Janelle's company online. Premier Events had a sleek website full of photos from elaborate weddings and corporate galas. There was a staff page with headshots and bios. I found Martin Kessler easily enough, Director of Client Relations, 15 years in event planning, graduate of Boston University. In his photo, he had the kind of smile that sold expensive things to people who didn't need them. Then I found Janelle's photo. Event strategist, it said. 5 years with the company. She was smiling in that professional way that doesn't quite reach the eyes, wearing a black blazer I recognized. What I didn't recognize was how she was looking at the camera. There was something different about her expression, something confident and secretive that I'd never seen at home, like she was keeping a delicious secret. I closed the browser and tried to get back to work, but the afternoon dragged by like cold honey. By 5 o'clock, I'd accomplished almost nothing except convincing myself I was losing my mind. The drive home took me past Premier Events' office building, a gleaming glass tower in downtown Boston's financial district. I told myself I was just curious, but I found myself slowing down as I passed the parking garage entrance. Just as I did, a silver BMW pulled out onto the street. Martin Kessler was driving, and Janelle was in the passenger seat. They were laughing about something, her head tilted back in genuine amusement. It was the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. Free and unguarded and happy. She reached over and touched his arm, and even from a distance, I could see the easy intimacy of the gesture. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The car behind me honked, and I realized I'd stopped moving entirely. I pulled forward, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. By the time I got home, I'd almost convinced myself I'd misinterpreted what I'd seen. Coworkers gave each other rides all the time. People laughed together. It didn't mean anything. But when Janelle came home 2 hours later, she was carrying takeout from an expensive Italian restaurant downtown. "Thought I'd pick up dinner," she said, unpacking containers of pasta and salad. I was in the area. "What area?" "Just running errands." She didn't meet my eyes. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said, watching her move around our kitchen like she was performing a play she'd rehearsed. "How did Martin like getting his watch back?" "Oh, he was grateful. Very grateful." She opened a bottle of wine, also expensive, also not something we usually kept in the house. "He said he was worried he'd lost it for good." "I bet he was." Something in my tone made her look up. Is everything okay? I seem what? I don't know. Suspicious? Like you're waiting for me to confess to something. The word confess hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire neither of us wanted to acknowledge. Should I be suspicious? I asked. Of course not. But her voice was too bright, too quick. Don't be ridiculous, Adrian. We ate dinner in near silence, the expensive pasta tasting like cardboard in my mouth. Janelle kept checking her phone, typing quick responses to messages she didn't share. When it buzzed with notifications, she'd flip it face down on the table like she was hiding cards in a poker game. After dinner, she disappeared upstairs for a long shower. I cleaned up the kitchen and tried to convince myself that marriages go through rough patches. That suspicion was just another form of paranoia, that I was seeing problems where none existed. But as I loaded the dishwasher, I found myself thinking about stress points again. In structural engineering, failure rarely happens all at once. It starts small, a tiny crack in a support beam, a bolt that's slightly loose, a foundation that's shifted just a fraction of an inch. You can't see the problem from the outside. Everything looks solid, stable, permanent, until the day it doesn't. That night, lying in bed listening to Janelle breathe beside me, I made a decision that would change everything. If my marriage was developing cracks, I needed to know how deep they went. I needed to see the foundation. Saturday morning, I told Janelle I was going to Home Depot to pick up supplies for the bathroom renovation we'd been talking about for months. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did go to Home Depot. I just didn't buy bathroom tiles. Instead, I found myself in the security section, staring at a display of hidden cameras designed for home monitoring. Keep an eye on your property when you're away, the packaging promised. Peace of mind in a compact design. Peace of mind, right. The salesperson was a kid named Tyler who looked like he'd never been married, never had his trust systematically dismantled by someone who promised to love him forever. He was enthusiastic about the technical specs. Wireless connectivity, motion activation, cloud storage, smartphone alerts. This model here, he said, holding up a device no bigger than a USB drive. You can hide it anywhere. Bookshelf, picture frame, even inside a stuffed animal. The camera lens is practically invisible, and the battery lasts up to 2 weeks on standby. What's the range? I asked, hating myself for asking. Whole house, as long as you've got Wi-Fi. You can monitor everything from your phone, download footage, even set up alerts for specific times or motion patterns. Tyler's eyes lit up like he was describing the latest video game. Some people use them to watch for burglars, but honestly, most of our customers are checking up on housekeepers or babysitters. You know, trust but verify. Trust but verify. The motto of the recently suspicious. I bought 2 cameras and spent the drive home telling myself I was being paranoid, that I'd install them and find nothing more incriminating than Janelle eating ice cream straight from the container or talking to herself while she folded laundry. I'd feel stupid for a week, then remove them and never mention it to anyone. But I couldn't shake the image of her laughing in Martin's car, the way she'd touched his arm, the casual intimacy that had looked so natural it must have been practiced. At home, Janelle was getting ready to meet her sister for lunch and shopping. She emerged from our bedroom wearing jeans that fit her perfectly and a sweater that somehow made her eyes look greener. You look great, I said, and meant it. Thanks. She grabbed her purse and keys. Sarah wants to hit the outlets and rent them, so I'll probably be gone most of the afternoon. What are you going to do with your day of freedom? Probably watch the game, maybe start on that bathroom project. Sounds perfect. She kissed my cheek, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. Love you. After she left, I sat in our living room for 10 minutes, holding the camera packages and feeling like the worst kind of husband. This was how marriages ended, not in explosive fights or dramatic confrontations, but in small betrayals of trust, in the moment when love turned into surveillance. But I opened the packages anyway. The first camera went in our bedroom, hidden inside the small teddy bear Emma had given us as a joke anniversary gift years ago. For when you need something to hug, she'd said, rolling her eyes at her sentimental parents. The irony was bitter now. I was using our daughter's gift to spy on her mother. The second camera I placed in the living room, tucked behind a picture frame on the bookshelf with a clear view of the front door and the stairs leading to our bedroom. If someone was coming and going from our house, I'd know about it. Setting up the app on my phone took 20 minutes and 3 calls to customer service, but eventually, I had a live feed from both cameras. I could see our empty living room, our unmade bed, the ordinary details of a life I'd thought I understood. Then I waited. Janelle came home at 6 with shopping bags and stories about her day with Sarah. She'd bought new underwear, she said. Practical stuff, nothing fancy. She showed me a few items, simple, comfortable, the kind of thing a woman buys when she's not trying to impress anyone, except she didn't show me everything in the bags. I caught a glimpse of black lace disappearing into her dresser drawer, expensive-looking fabric that definitely wasn't practical. Sunday passed quietly. We went to brunch at our usual place, walked around the reservoir, watched a movie on the couch with her feet in my lap. It felt like old times, like the couple we used to be. I started to think I'd been wrong about everything. Monday morning, Janelle left for work wearing a dress I'd definitely never seen before. Deep red, fitted, professional, but with a hint of something that made me think of first dates and stolen kisses. She said she had a late meeting with a client and would probably be home around 9. I went to work and tried to focus on structural calculations, but every hour I found myself checking my phone, looking at the empty feeds from our house. Nothing. Just afternoon sunlight moving across empty rooms. At 3:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app, expecting to see Janelle coming home early, maybe with groceries or dry cleaning. Instead, I watched her unlock our front door and step inside, followed immediately by Martin Kessler. They were laughing about something, standing close together in our entryway. Too close. Martin's hand was on the small of her back, and Janelle was looking up at him with an expression I recognized but hadn't seen directed at me in months. Desire mixed with mischief, the look of someone about to do something deliciously wrong. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, sitting in my cubicle and watching my marriage implode in real time on a 3-inch screen. They moved through our living room toward the stairs, Martin's hands already reaching for the zipper of Janelle's dress. She was saying something that made him laugh, her fingers working at the buttons of his shirt. They looked like actors in a movie about beautiful people having beautiful affairs, except this was my house, my wife, my life being dismantled one kiss at a time. I closed the app before they reached the bedroom. I couldn't watch that. Wouldn't. But I didn't delete the footage. For the rest of the afternoon, I sat at my desk in a kind of shocked numbness, mechanically reviewing plans and specifications while my mind tried to process what I'd seen. Dave asked me twice if I was feeling okay. I told him I was fine, which was possibly the biggest lie I'd ever told. At 5:30, I got another motion alert. I watched Martin leave our house, straightening his tie and checking his watch. A different watch, I noticed, not the Rolex. He looked satisfied, relaxed, like a man who'd just finished a very good meal. Janelle appeared in the living room 20 minutes later, dressed in yoga clothes, hair damp from a shower. She moved through our house like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just brought her lover into our bed and our life. When I got home at 7, she was cooking dinner, salmon with asparagus, my favorite meal. She'd opened a bottle of the good wine, lit candles on the dining room table, even put on the jazz album we'd played at our wedding. "What's the occasion?" I asked, accepting the glass of wine she offered. "No occasion, just thought we could use a nice evening together." She smiled, and it looked genuine. "We've both been so busy lately, we barely see each other." I almost laughed at the audacity of it. She was right. We barely saw each other, but she was seeing plenty of Martin. "This is nice," I said, playing my part in whatever performance we were giving. "Really nice." During dinner, she told me about her day, meetings with vendors, a difficult client who couldn't decide between orchids and roses, the usual challenges of event planning. She was animated, engaged, asking about my work, and actually listening to my answers. It was the best conversation we'd had in months. It was also completely built on lies. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and thinking about foundation failures. In my business, we call it catastrophic structural collapse, the moment when accumulated stress finally exceeds a material's ability to bear weight. From the outside, it looks sudden, unexpected, but it never really is. The failure starts long before anyone notices, growing invisibly until the day the whole structure comes down. I'd found the crack in my marriage's foundation. Now I had to decide what to do about it. Tuesday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Janelle left for the office at her usual time, kissing me goodbye and telling me to get some rest. She was wearing the black lace underwear I'd glimpsed in her shopping bags, though she'd covered it with a conservative gray suit that made her look like a successful professional woman with nothing to hide. After she left, I sat in our kitchen with my laptop and a legal pad, drinking coffee and planning the systematic destruction of my wife's affair with the same methodical approach I used to design buildings. First, I needed evidence. Real evidence, not just the footage from yesterday that could be dismissed as a one-time mistake or moment of weakness. I needed to document patterns, establish timelines, create an unshakable record of deception. I downloaded the security camera software to my laptop and started organizing files. The cameras had been recording continuously since Saturday, storing everything in cloud storage. Most of it was boring, empty rooms, me moving through the house, Janelle's normal routines. but Monday's footage was a goldmine. I watched it again, this time forcing myself to see everything. They'd been in our house for 2 hours. 2 hours of my wife and her boss treating our home like their personal hotel room, laughing and touching and doing things in our bed that she hadn't done with me in months. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was how comfortable they looked together. This wasn't a new thing. The way Martin moved through our house, the way Janelle anticipated his needs, the easy intimacy between them, this had been going on for a while. I made notes. Times, dates, details. Then I started researching. Martin Kessler, I learned, was married to a woman named Alyssa. They lived in a colonial in Newton, had 2 teenage kids, and according to his social media, enjoyed sailing and wine tasting. His LinkedIn profile was full of recommendations from satisfied clients praising his attention to detail and personal touch. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Premier Events had a detailed employee handbook posted on their website, including a section on workplace relationships and conflicts of interest. Romantic relationships between supervisors and direct reports were strictly prohibited and grounds for immediate termination. I took screenshots of everything. Next, I called my sister Cassie. At 38, she ran a boxing gym in Southie and had the kind of street-smart wisdom that comes from growing up in a family where everyone learned to fight before they learned to read. "Adrian, why aren't you at work?" she answered on the second ring. "I need to talk to you. Can you meet me for lunch?" "Sure. You sound weird. Everything okay?" "I'll explain when I see you." We met at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar near her gym that served the kind of food that could cure hangovers and broken hearts in equal measure. Cassie took one look at my face and ordered us both whiskey with our burgers. "All right," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What did Janelle do?" I told her everything. The watch, the late nights, the cameras, the footage. Cassie listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. "That snake," she said when I finished. "That absolute snake." "I don't know what to do, Cass." "Yes, you do. You're just afraid to do it." She leaned forward. "You document everything, you get a lawyer, and you burn her life down. Scorched earth, Adrian. She wants to play games. Show her what happens when she plays with the wrong guy." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." Cassie's eyes were fierce. "She brought another man into your house, into your bed. She's been lying to your face for God knows how long. And you're sitting here feeling guilty about catching her?" She was right, but admitting it felt like stepping off a cliff. "What about Emma?" I asked. "What about our life together, everything we built?" She should have thought about that before she decided to sleep with her boss. Cassie's voice was flat, final. "You want my advice? Stop being a victim and start being a predator. She's been hunting you for months, picking you apart piece by piece. Time to show her what a real hunter looks like." That afternoon, I drove to downtown Boston and met with Patricia Reeves, a divorce attorney whose reputation for aggressive representation was legendary in Massachusetts legal circles. She was 55, sharply dressed, and had the kind of smile that made opposing counsel wake up in cold sweats. "Mr. Falk," she said, reviewing the files I'd brought. "This is quite comprehensive. Hidden cameras, documented timeline, workplace policy violations, evidence of ongoing deception. You've been thorough. I'm a structural engineer. Thoroughness is what I do." "Good. Because in divorce proceedings, details matter. Your wife has made several critical errors." She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "First, she's having an affair with her direct supervisor, which violates her company's policies and could result in termination. Second, she's brought him into the marital home, which demonstrates clear disrespect for the marriage. Third, she's been systematically deceiving you while enjoying the benefits of the marriage, financial support, shared assets, the appearance of respectability. What does that mean for me? It means we have leverage. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still matters when it comes to asset division and alimony. Your wife's behavior demonstrates that she's been acting in bad faith, which a judge will consider when dividing property." Patricia outlined the strategy. File for divorce citing irreconcilable differences, but use the evidence of adultery to negotiate a favorable settlement. Freeze joint accounts to prevent asset hiding. Document everything to establish a pattern of deception. "How long will this take?" I asked. "Depends on whether she wants to fight or settle quietly. Given what she has to lose, her job, her reputation, her financial security, I suspect she'll be motivated to cooperate." I signed the retainer agreement and left her office feeling like I'd just loaded a gun. Now I had to decide when to pull the trigger. That evening, Janelle came home with flowers, white roses, my favorite, and news about her day. "Martin's wife is planning a surprise party for his birthday next month," she said, arranging the roses in a vase. She asked me to help coordinate since I know his work schedule. Isn't that sweet? The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She was standing in our kitchen, talking about helping Martin's wife plan a party for the man she was sleeping with, and she looked genuinely pleased about the whole thing. Very sweet, I managed. I thought maybe we could go together, you and me, Martin and Alyssa. It might be fun to socialize with my work people. I almost said yes. Almost played along with her game just to see how far she'd take it, but the thought of shaking Martin's hand while his wife thanked Janelle for her help was more than I could stomach. We'll see, I said. Work's been crazy lately. That night, I lay in bed listening to Janelle sleep and thinking about timing. I had the evidence, the legal strategy, the support system. But I wanted something more than just a favorable divorce settlement. I wanted justice, and justice, I was learning, required patience. Wednesday morning brought rain and the kind of gray sky that made Boston look like a noir movie. Janelle left for work early, claiming she had a breakfast meeting with a vendor. I waited 30 minutes, then checked the camera feeds from my phone. Nothing, just empty rooms and the sound of rain against windows. But at 11:23 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app expecting to see a delivery person, or maybe our neighbor's cat, but instead watched Martin Kessler let himself into our house with a key I'd never given him. He moved through our living room like he owned it, checking his phone and shrugging out of his expensive coat. 20 minutes later, Janelle arrived, and they fell into each other's arms like reunited lovers in a romance movie. I closed the app and sat in my cubicle, shaking with rage. A key. She'd given him a key to our house. You look like you're about to murder someone, Dave said from the next desk. Just work stress, I lied. But Dave was more perceptive than I gave him credit for. At lunch, he cornered me in the break room. Okay, what's really going on? You've been acting strange for days, you called in sick yesterday for the first time since I've known you, and now you're sitting here looking like someone ran over your dog. I almost told him everything. Dave had been through 2 messy divorces. He'd understand. But something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe the need to keep my humiliation private until I was ready to act on it. Just marriage stuff, I said finally. Ah, Dave nodded knowingly. She cheating? The directness of the question caught me off guard. What makes you say that? Experience. The way you've been checking your phone constantly, the distracted look, the general air of a man whose world is falling apart. I've been there, buddy. Twice. Dave's expression was sympathetic but matter-of-fact. You want some advice? Sure. Document everything, get a good lawyer, and don't confront her until you're ready for war. Women who cheat are usually planning their exit strategy long before they get caught. If you tip your hand too early, she'll lawyer up and start hiding assets. What if I'm wrong? What if it's not what I think? Dave laughed, but there was no humor in it. Adrian, you're a smart guy. Smart enough to design buildings that don't fall down, smart enough to spot structural problems before they become catastrophic. Trust your instincts. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of just collecting evidence, I was going to accelerate the timeline, force Janelle and Martin into a position where they had to make choices, take risks, expose themselves. I was going to set a trap. The plan was simple. I'd tell Janelle I was going out of town for work, give her the perfect opportunity to bring Martin over for an extended visit, and document everything. Then I'd return unexpectedly and catch them in the act. That evening, I mentioned casually that my boss wanted me to visit a construction site in Hartford to consult on some structural issues. When? Janelle asked, not looking up from her phone. Thursday morning. Probably won't be back until Friday evening. Maybe Saturday if the problems are worse than they think. That's too bad. I was hoping we could do something this weekend. She was lying, of course. I could see it in the way she was trying not to smile, the barely contained excitement in her voice. A whole night with Martin, in our house, in our bed, with no risk of being caught. Rain check? I said. Of course. Thursday morning, I made a show of packing an overnight bag and loading my car. I kissed Janelle goodbye, told her I'd call when I got to Hartford, and drove away like a husband going on a business trip. Instead, I went to Cassie's gym and spent the day working out my rage on heavy bags and weight machines. She'd given me a key to the place, and I had it to myself until her afternoon classes started. You sure about this plan? She asked, watching me demolish a speed bag with more violence than technique. No, but I'm sure about what I saw on those cameras. What are you going to do when you catch them? I don't know yet. We'll figure it out fast. Because once you walk into that house, there's no going back. Everything changes after that. At 6 p.m., I checked the camera feeds. Janelle was home, moving around the kitchen in a black dress I'd never seen before. She was cooking, something elaborate, judging by the number of pots and pans, and she'd lit candles throughout the house. At 6:47, Martin arrived with flowers and a bottle of champagne. They kissed in our doorway like newlyweds, and I watched him hand her a small, wrapped box that made her eyes light up. I drove home through rush-hour traffic, my hands steady on the wheel despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was it, the moment when everything I'd suspected became undeniable reality, when my marriage officially ended and something else began. I parked 2 blocks away and walked through our neighborhood in the gathering dusk. Our house glowed with warm light. Looking from the outside like the perfect home of a happy couple enjoying a romantic dinner. I used my key to enter through the back door, moving quietly through our mudroom and into the kitchen. I could hear voices from the dining room, Janelle laughing at something Martin was saying, the clink of silverware against plates, the intimate sounds of 2 people who thought they were alone. "Told him you were going to Hartford," Janelle was saying as I crept closer. "Poor bastard probably thinks we're just colleagues," Martin replied. "If he only knew what his wife does when he's not around." Adrian's not exactly the most observant man in the world. He's so focused on his blueprints and calculations, he wouldn't notice if I brought home a brass band. They were talking about me, mocking me. In my house, at my dining room table, eating food bought with my money. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Still," Martin continued, "we should probably be more careful. What if he comes home early?" "He won't. Adrian's the most predictable man alive. If he says he'll be back Friday, he'll be back Friday. Probably at exactly 6:30, because that's when he always gets home from work." "Good thing I don't have to be predictable," Martin said. "Speaking of which, did you like your present?" "I love it. But Martin, this must have cost a fortune." "You're worth it. Besides, my wife never wears jewelry anymore. She's too busy with her book club and yoga classes to notice if I buy something nice for someone who actually appreciates it." I'd heard enough. I stepped into the dining room doorway and cleared my throat. "Evening, folks. Don't mind me. Just came back for something I forgot." The silence that followed was absolute. Janelle's face went white, then red, then white again. Martin choked on his wine and started coughing. The small jewelry box sat open on the table between them, revealing diamond earrings that cost more than my car. "Adrian," Janelle whispered, "you're supposed to be in Hartford." "Change of plans," I said, still recording. Turns out the structural problems weren't as serious as we thought. Funny how that works. Sometimes things that look catastrophic from the outside are actually pretty easy to fix. Martin stood up, straightening his tie in a gesture that might have looked authoritative if his hands weren't shaking. "Adrian, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding at all," I said calmly. "I understand perfectly. My wife is sleeping with her boss in my house while I'm supposedly out of town. Pretty clear situation, actually." "Adrian, please," Janelle said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been lying to me for months. How you gave him a key to our house. How you've been planning romantic dinners while telling me you're working late." I held up my phone. "Don't worry. I've got all the explanation I need right here." Martin's face had gone pale. "You've been recording us?" "Among other things. You'd be amazed what modern technology can do. Hidden cameras, motion sensors, cloud storage. It's like having your own personal surveillance team." The implications hit them both at the same time. If I had recordings from tonight, what else did I have? How long had I been watching? How much did I know? "Adrian," Janelle stood up slowly, like she was approaching a dangerous animal. "I know this looks bad, but it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, and now I have to decide what to do about it." I stopped recording and slipped the phone into my pocket. Then I looked at both of them, my wife of 15 years and the man who'd been screwing her in my bed, and smiled. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "Martin, you're going to leave my house right now. You're going to drive home to your wife and kids and think very carefully about whether this affair is worth losing your job, your marriage, and your reputation. And Janelle, you and I are going to have a conversation about the future." Martin grabbed his coat and headed for the door without another word. Coward. When we were alone, Janelle collapsed into her chair and started crying in earnest. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Adrian. It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far." "Stop," I said. "Just stop. We both know this didn't just happen. You made choices, Janelle. Every day for months, you made the choice to lie to me, to betray me, to bring him into our home. Own it." She looked up at me with mascara running down her cheeks, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. I thought about Patricia Reeves waiting for my call, about the evidence files on my laptop, about the choice between mercy and justice. I'm going to show you what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness, I said, and it's going to be educational for both of us. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Janelle. She spent the hours alternating between tearful apologies and angry justifications, while I sat in my home office organizing files and making phone calls to people who work late when there's money involved. By Friday morning, I'd set several wheels in motion. First call, Patricia Reeves, my attorney. File everything, I told her. Divorce papers, asset freeze, the works. I want her served at her office in front of her colleagues. Second call, Premier Events HR Department. I'd found the direct number for their compliance hotline on the company website. I have evidence of a workplace relationship between a supervisor and direct report, I told the woman who answered. I think you'll find it very interesting. Third call, a private investigator Patricia had recommended. I need you to serve some papers and document the reaction, I said, and I need it done publicly. Janelle left for work Friday morning without saying goodbye. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Puffy eyes, pale skin, the kind of exhaustion that comes from knowing your life is about to implode. We need to talk when I get home, she said from the doorway. No, I replied without looking up from my laptop. We really don't. At 10:30 a.m., I got a text from the private investigator. Package delivered. Target's reaction was dramatic, sending video. The video showed Janelle in Premier Events' sleek lobby, accepting an envelope from a professional-looking woman in a business suit. The moment Janelle realized what she was holding, divorce papers, asset freeze orders, copies of the surveillance footage, her knees actually buckled. She grabbed the reception desk for support while her colleagues watched in fascination. Then Martin appeared, probably coming to check on her, and the PI handed him his own envelope. His face went white as he read the letter from Premier Events' legal department, informing him that he was suspended pending investigation of workplace misconduct. By noon, my phone was buzzing with calls from Janelle. I let them all go to voicemail. Adrian, please pick up. We can work this out. Please don't do this. Call me back. Adrian, Martin says you sent something to his wife. That's going too far. That's cruel. Adrian, they fired me. They sleeping with fired me. Are you happy now? Call me back. I wasn't happy exactly, but I was satisfied. For months, Janelle had been making choices that affected both our lives without consulting me. Now I was returning the favor. At 2 p.m., Dave knocked on my cubicle wall. Hey, you okay? You look like you're planning a military campaign over there. Just organizing some personal business, I said. This about that marriage stuff you mentioned? It was. Now it's about the divorce stuff. Dave nodded slowly. Need to talk? So I told him everything. The whole story, from the watch to the cameras to the confrontation last night. Dave listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking his head or muttering profanities under his breath. Jesus, Adrian, I'm sorry. That's brutal. Yeah, well, she made her choices. What's next? Now I wait and see how far she's willing to go to save herself. I didn't have to wait long. At 4 p.m., Janelle showed up at my office. I saw her through the glass partition, talking to our receptionist, gesturing frantically. She looked desperate, unhinged. Adrian, she called when she saw me. We need to talk, right now. Every head in the office turned. My colleagues were getting a front row seat to the destruction of my marriage, and Janelle was too panicked to care about the spectacle she was making. Not here, I said, standing up. Then where? You won't answer my calls, you won't come home? I am home. You're the one who's not welcome there anymore. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually staggered backward. You can't kick me out of my own house. Actually, I can. Check the restraining order. It's temporary, but it gives me exclusive use of the marital home while we sort out the divorce. You bastard. Her voice was rising, drawing even more attention. You vindictive, cruel bastard. I made one mistake. One mistake? I laughed, and the sound was harsh enough to make her flinch. Janelle, you've been sleeping with your boss for months. In our bed. With a key you gave him to our house. That's not one mistake. That's a sustained campaign of betrayal. I love him, she shouted, and the words echoed through the office like a gunshot. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone was staring now, not even pretending to work. My personal life had become the afternoon's entertainment, and Janelle was the star of the show. Then you should have divorced me before you started screwing him, I said quietly. But you didn't want to give up the financial security, did you? You wanted your stable marriage and your exciting affair. Well, congratulations. Now you get to choose. Security arrived then. 2 guards who escorted Janelle out while she screamed threats and accusations. The whole office watched through the windows as she was walked to her car, and I knew the story would be all over Boston's structural engineering community by Monday. Good. Let everyone know what happened when you betrayed Adrian Falk. That evening, I came home to find Janelle's car in the driveway and the front door standing open. She was inside, throwing clothes into suitcases and muttering to herself like a woman on the edge of a breakdown. "You can't do this," she said when she saw me. 15 years of marriage, and you're throwing it all away over one affair? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. Martin loves me. He's going to leave his wife. We're going to be together. Martin's not leaving anyone, I said. I talked to his wife this afternoon. Turns out Alyssa is a family law attorney with a very good memory for prenups and a very bad temper when it comes to cheating husbands. He's about to lose half his assets and both his kids. The color drained from Janelle's face. You're lying. Call him and ask. She did, right there in our living room, and I watched her world collapse in real time. Martin didn't answer the first call, or the second, or the third. When he finally picked up on the fourth try, I could hear his voice through the phone. Panicked, angry, desperate. It's over, Janelle. Alyssa knows everything. I can't see you anymore. I can't even talk to you. My lawyer says... Janelle hung up and sank onto our couch, the phone falling from her nerveless fingers. He's scared, she whispered. He's just scared. When things calm down... Things aren't going to calm down, I said. This is what consequences look like, Janelle. You gambled our marriage on a man who was never going to choose you over his comfortable life, and you lost. Both of you lost. She looked up at me then with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure hatred, raw and undisguised. You destroyed everything, she hissed. Our marriage, my job, my future, you destroyed it all because your ego couldn't handle being cheated on. No, I said calmly. You destroyed it all when you decided to cheat. I just made sure everyone could see the wreckage clearly. She finished packing in silence and left without saying goodbye. I watched her drive away from our house, my house now, and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For months, I'd been living with the stress of a failing marriage, the constant low-level anxiety of knowing something was wrong, but not being able to prove it. Now I knew exactly where I stood. The uncertainty was over. My phone rang. Patricia Reeves. Adrian, I've been reviewing the settlement offer from Janelle's attorney. She's willing to walk away from the house, take minimal alimony, and agree to a quick divorce in exchange for you not releasing the surveillance footage publicly. What do you think? I think she's desperate and scared, which means we have all the leverage. But I also think prolonging this fight will cost you more in legal fees than you'll gain in assets. Sometimes the best revenge is just winning cleanly and moving on. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. Counteroffer, I said. She gets nothing. No alimony, no shared assets, no claim to my pension or retirement accounts. She walks away with whatever she can carry and never contacts me again. Adrian, that's my final offer. She can take it, or we can go to trial and let a judge decide after seeing all the evidence, including the footage of her giving her lover a key to our house. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I'll make the call. 2 hours later, she called back. She accepted. And just like that, it was over. 15 years of marriage dissolved in a stack of legal papers signed and notarized and filed with the state of Massachusetts. I poured myself a glass of the expensive whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion and sat in my living room, looking around at the house that was now completely mine. Everything was exactly as it had been a week ago, but it all looked different somehow. Cleaner, more honest. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you won, but you just destroyed the best thing that ever happened to you. I hope you're happy alone. I deleted it without responding. Some people never learn that the best way to win a war is not to start one you can't finish. But I hadn't started this war. I'd just ended it.